A very good morning to all of you. This is about a 10-year-old girl child who is hailing from Mumbai, who is born of non-consensual marriage and has come to us with complaints of abdominal distension for the past 1 month. The abdominal distension was gradual in onset, was progressive in nature and was uniform in distribution. This distension was not associated with any fever, jaundice or swelling anywhere else on the body. There was no breathing difficulty associated. There were no medical issues in the past. She was a well school-going girl and had been completely immunized up to 5 years of age. Her father had died due to HIV 6 years ago. The mother had been recently started on antiretroviral therapy for the past 15 days. The child was then screened for HIV serology and was found to be positive. She was thus referred to us for further management. Her vitals were stable, however she was malnourished. She was more wasted than stunted. Her BMI was 13. She had insignificant lymph nodes. On per abdominal examination, she had a mild hepatomegaly. Liver was just palpable of around 2 centimeter, which was firm in consistency. Spleen was just palpable and there was minimal ascites. Other systemic examination was normal. So, summarizing, this is a 10-year-old girl child with seropositive status with undernutrition, minimal ascites, and mild hepatosplenomegaly.
Yeah, so now we are sitting in a liver conference. So obviously we are going to discuss something about liver and not more about HIV. So we have this child with a hepatosplenomegaly, which can be a part of HIV itself. But you have a child here who also has ascites. So is this related to HIV?
If you have clinically detectable ascites, it cannot be minimal ascites. So I think that is one major clarification which we should have. So if on clinical examination, if you're getting ascites, it is shifting dullness, it's positive. That means there is at least 500 ml of fluid in adults and in whatever the equivalent in the pediatric. But that means there is a significant amount of ascites, so it cannot be ignored.
But do you think this ascites is because of HIV or we should be looking at something else?
I mean, normally if it is HIV, you generally get, lymphadenopathy and hepatosplenomegaly, but no ascites. So I would think that there is a associated other problem which is causing this rather than just blame it on the HIV alone.
So usually if you have a painless progressive abdominal distension, by sheer commonality, the commonest cause is liver disease. So liver disease is definitely very high on the cards.
Could this be tuberculous peritonitis in a child with seropositive state?
Yeah, I think this, whenever any patient of seropositive HIV, whenever you have this, like in this case, there's ascites, whether it is, we'll have to look at from two angles. Is it related to the, because of the liver, or is it not related to liver, and is it a OI? So I think the first thing we would look in a child of HIV having ascites is to always look for whether it's an opportunistic infection like tuberculosis. What you're saying is correct.
So the clinical way to differentiate whether it's a liver disease related ascites or it's a infection or some other local cause. So on history and examination itself, you have certain clues. So remember that ascites due to liver disease will almost always be preceded and associated with some amount of decrease in urine output. So that is something which you should always ask for. Remember that ascites forms only when there is excessive sodium retention and secondary water retention. So almost invariably you will have decreased urine output in these cohort of patients. If you have a local cause, a peritoneal cause, then usually they won't have a decrease in urine output. Second, you may have additional signs of local pathology in the form of abdominal pain or you may have constitutional features. Having said that, the absence of these things does not mean that there is no infection. So if you have these features, if you have somebody with a local abdominal pain, if you have fever, yes, it goes more in favor of a local peritoneal pathology. But absence of these things does not rule out. So I think you still in this case, we don't have we cannot say with surety what is the cause of ascites, but yes, liver disease is high on the cards. Second thing is you have to rule out local infections like tuberculosis, as you said.
Okay, so now we have a child with HIV who's come to us. She's come with ascites. How would you like to go about in this child? What would you like to do now?
So, first of all, we could classify our investigations into two groups. So, first, I would also like to know what is the stage of HIV in her. So, I would want to do a CD4 count because that really tells me how far advanced is HIV disease and what opportunistic infections this patient might be having. So, that we should do. The second thing is we should do a liver function test here, because the pattern of abnormalities on the liver function test can give some clue as to what could be the etiology of liver disease in this patient. We should definitely do an ultrasound abdomen because that would give us some important information. What is the kind of fluid? Are there signs of portal hypertension or not? Because that would help us in categorizing. It would also tell us about intra-abdominal lymphadenopathy, which would be a marker of, some other infection. And then the other things is I would definitely want to do a Hep B and Hep C serology to try and see whether there is a co-infection which is causing, because these co-infections exist. So in the preliminary investigation group, I would like to do these tests.
I would add ascitic fluid analysis
ascitic
because
fluid.
and other things I agree with her. Another thing I would add is a complete hemogram, and especially anybody whom you suspect a liver disease, look at the platelet counts. So those are the two things which I will definitely look for. And if you have a liver disease and if you have a normal hemogram, then you have to think of myeloproliferative disease and hepatic vein thrombosis. So that is what I would be looking at in these subgroup of patients.
Yeah, I think as Dr. Tanu said, I would look this patient from two aspects. One is the HIV and what is the fluid doing in the abdomen there. So I'll look from HIV point of view, like what she said, to look for the immunological status. What is the stage of the disease? CD4. What is the viral load? HIV viral load in this patient. We'd like to look for co-infection. What is HIV HB? So completely do a serum VDRL. Okay, IgG toxoplasma. So you look completely from HIV point of view. That is one part. And second point, what is this ascites due to? So I would segregate two completely separately. These two.
We definitely have to rule out co-infections in any vertically transmitted HIV. So hepatitis B, C, VDRL has to be done in any child with vertically transmitted HIV. The audience wants to add any more investigations? Yes? Just take the mic.
But before we go to investigations, I would just ask presenter that what was the consistency and the sharpness of the liver which was palpable, because that would help us to decide is it CLD or something else.
Liver was sharp, firm in consistency.
And with sharp borders, right?
Sharp borders.
Okay. And second thing to Sir Dr. Nagvekar, sir, is it possible to have full-blown AIDS at 10 years of age, assuming that there was a transplacental or the vertical transmission?
That is possible. I mean, normally the progress of the disease is much faster in the infant or neonate, but usually later on slows down. But at 10 years, of course, you can have patients having
This child is
opportunistic
not
infections.
clinically into AIDS. If you consider with
Because
hepatosplenomegaly, malnutrition.
Yeah, other differential is opportunistic infection related to AIDS.
So this child is basically, if we classify clinically, it would be WHO stage 3.
Okay.
If we take CDC classification, it would be stage class B. So it's not full-blown AIDS as yet.
So it is more likely to be CLD and
It's
probably
moderate
PST related.
HIV disease. It's not a very advanced HIV disease.
Agreed.
I think the other very interesting point which he brought up was the sharpness of the edge of the liver. We have all read in our textbooks during undergraduate days that if you have a sharp edge, it usually indicates a chronic liver disease. But if you go back into literature and read, the specificity of this thing is only 50%. So if you can toss a coin and decide whether it is really a chronic liver disease or not. So I think that is one thing which you have to unlearn from our undergraduate days. The sharpness of edge of the liver is not a 100% thing.
Right. The other thing in this child, what we need to keep in mind is we're talking about HIV, so we have to screen for TB. So we must do a Mantoux test and an X-ray test in all these patients. We must do a urine routine because a lot of these moderate HIV disease or class B tend to have proteinuria. So we should be doing a urine routine also to see for the other system. Obviously the CD4 and all the other tests that you told us.
Sorry to interrupt, just 1 second. Just a reminder to all the postgraduates here, when you want to ask a question, please write your name, what you're doing and the institute that you're from down on a piece of paper and hand it to the gentleman with the basket. He'll pass it on to the moderator, and please also make a mention of your question on that chit. Thank you.
So we did a complete hemogram in her. Hemoglobin was 11. Total count was 3,900 with a slight polymorph predominance. Her ESR was 100. Chest X-ray was normal. Mantoux was negative. Her CD4 count was 129 cells and urine routine was normal.
What was the platelet count on the hemogram?
Platelets were normal, sir, around 3.9 mg. Her liver function test showed bilirubin of 0.6, SGOT of 171, SGPT of 191, PT-PTT was normal, albumin was 3.8, and ultrasound showed mild hepatosplenomegaly with minimal ascites. There was ecotexture of the liver was normal. The Doppler showed no portal hypertension.
What was the SAP and GGT in this patient? And what
Ma'am,
was the albumin globulin ratio?
actually, because the ultrasound showed minimal ascites, we did not go ahead with
If
Ascites.
her GGTP has not been done, but her alkaline phosphatase was normal, her ratio was maintained.
Okay.
her H-base AG was non-reactive, hepatitis C ELISA was non-reactive, and VDRL was negative.
Yeah, the question here is that on the ultrasound, the ascitic fluid was not tappable. So even though clinically we did find ascites, they said it's not tappable. Now the question is, we've ruled out co-infections in this child. We do have high liver enzymes. We have a very low CD4 count here. So even if we take a criteria of 200 cutoff, which was in the earlier days, now 350, and now a CD4 of 500 as a cutoff, this child definitely with WHO stage 3, immunological category 3, would require ART. But should we be starting ART in this child now?
I think the thumb rule is always treat the OI first and then the HIV. We are never in a hurry. So the thumb rule is that always treat the opportunistic infections first and then the HIV. You are never in a hurry to treat HIV. You always will mess up if you are in a hurry to start HIV first. So ART should be the last thing to be started. It's never been a hurry, even if the patient has got the first thing is neurological. But any opportunistic infection, the thumb rule is first try to diagnose what is the OI, treat the OI, but depending upon what is the CD4 and what is the OI, then you would decide about when to start the antiretroviral therapy.
So I think the discussion is that whether this patient now has actually an OI or not, because whatever tests have been done, at least Hep C, Hep B is not there. Of course, MAN2 can be negative because, she has such a low CD4 count. And the X-ray chest is normal, but that I don't think is enough. Does the sonography show any intra-abdominal nodes, etc.?
There are no nodes.
There are no nodes. Does this patient have any fever at all?
No, there's no fever in this child. What is unusual is the liver enzymes that are elevated, which we don't find in HIV usually. So what do we do in such a scenario?
Think of CMV also in this case.
A CMV test.
The other thing is, if you are finding clinical ascites and if your ultrasound report is showing minimal ascites, non-tappable, usually this ultrasound has been done in the middle of the night and your emergency registrar has been called. Okay, and he doesn't want to do the tapping at this stage. Because, it's just impossible that you find clinically ascites and the ultrasound says that fluid is not tappable. So either we are wrong or the ultrasound registry is wrong.
Would you want to work up for chronic liver disease at this stage?
Yes. Again, based on one enzyme, I don't want to work up for a full chronic liver disease. But definitely, this is something which cannot be ignored. Your enzymes are more than almost 5 times upper limit of normal.
So what would you like to do now?
So like I said, you would like to do CMV serology in this patient and then do the rest of the work.
Now, if we think of opportunistic infections which involve the liver, let's go the list and see whether this patient could be having any of them at that CD4 count. So if we talk about viral infections, it's Hep B, Hep C, it's CMV and EBV. These are the 4 major infections. So CMV, as he said, but normally these patients can present with just they may be low-grade fever, they may be mild enzyme abnormalities, but usually CMV would come at a slightly lower CD4 count. The second is bacterial infections. Yeah, it can come at this also.
No, how common would be isolated
It's CMV at
hepatitis
this.
Without a retinitis or any other manifestation?
So that would be rare. Then second would be bacterial infections like MTB. Now, usually in tuberculosis, you generally get a picture of a granulomatous hepatitis. So you do see mild enzyme elevation and you see a marked elevation of serum alkaline phosphatase. So the fact that you told me that serum alkaline phosphatase is not elevated and there are no nodes and everything, that is unlikely. Now, MAC, Mycobacterium avium intracellular, can come with liver enzyme abnormalities, but in that case, usually there is a history of fever, there is a history of weight loss and diarrhea.
MAC would have usually also had pancytopenia.
Pancyte. So this
associated.
patient does have a count of 3900, the WBC, but the platelets are normal.
and the
And in
hemoglobin.
fact, the fact that the platelets are normal and there's no portal hypertension on the sonography makes me wonder, and the albumin is also normal, which is 3.8, which is a very good albumin for a patient who's so malnourished, makes me doubt whether this could be a chronic liver disease as well.
Could this just be a subclinical hepatitis A, which we picked up?
So for that, I would like to do a serial ASG, SGOT, SGPT, SS. Based on one enzyme report, I would never investigate thoroughly.
So probably-
So I would probably repeat after a week or so and then see the trend and
So
then decide.
we see the trend of the liver function test.
I
Okay.
think, Dr. Ira, I would like to slightly, basically, again, I said, no, with the CD for 129 and all that. Again, my main thing is always to look for an opportunity infection here. And unless I rule out tuberculosis in Indian setting, I will not be very, comfortable with this. So I will definitely go for possibly a CT abdomen, where to look for any granulomas in the liver, to look for any abdominal necrotic lymph nodes, which ultrasound can be definitely missed because it's more operator dependent, or even it's not an investigation of choice when you have. And also, I will go ahead and do an ascitic tapping, because that ascitic fluid tapping would also give me a lot of information, because routine, you get a TB gene expert, you get a AB smear, and I think unless I rule out an opportunity infection, then only I would go in for the next set of investigation, meaning all the CMV, EBV and all that.
So
The first thing is, for me, is to rule out a tuberculosis in this setting.
So we have a whole list of investigations that we could go further with: CMV, EBV, CT scan.
No, I
Prob-
agree with what he is saying, that if you can somehow tap the fluid, you should tap
Right,
the fluid.
yeah.
First, to
So
try to see
the
what is
golden rule of
fluid
thumb is the first time ascites, always put in a needle.
Right.
And then in every subsequent admission, if you're not getting a diagnosis, put in a needle.
CT abdomen may show necrotic lymph nodes.
Right.
It might, liver may show hepatic granuloma. Your spleen may show some granuloma. May show your abscess. So many. You do a HRCT test. Maybe patient may having a miliary TB.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the first
I
thing I
wish
would
our
do.
patient was so compliant. So we'll come to what happened next.
Okay.
Yeah, before we go, suppose this child never improved and the enzymes always remained high. At what liver enzymes can we start ART? Because we all know that ART is hepatotoxic. So at what liver enzyme level should we be starting the ART?
See, this patient has liver enzymes which are less than 5 times of the upper limit of normal. So this is like grade 1. So I don't think that is an absolute contraindication for starting ART. However, I would choose my ART carefully, and generally what literature says is to not use nevirapine in these patients.
Yeah. So we'll come to choosing the ART, but this is not a contraindication for starting an
But
ART.
again, Dr. Ira, I would like to again stress upon ki, again, I'm not in a hurry to start ART. Why are the liver enzymes
Agree.
deranged here? So
Agree.
my main aim is ki, what is happening to
Yeah,
this
we
patient? Why is
find
the
about
ascites?
that, but we also tell the patient, look, we are going to start you on ART. It's not a contraindication on starting
Yeah.
ART, but we want to find out the cause of your liver dysfunction.
I mean, I would first find out the cause, and then ART is not a problem even with the liver enzyme, because there's so many antiretroviral drugs which are very safe from liver point of view,
Right.
and most of the regimens which are available are quite comfortable with any liver enzymes. So I'm not worried about the ART starting, or that is not an issue. The issue is what is the ascites, what is the liver enzymes raised.
Patient was advised regarding repetition of liver function test and was also advised for starting of antiretroviral therapy. However, she was lost to follow-up for 3 months. 3 months later, her liver transaminases were almost the same. SGOT was 141, SGPT was 193. At that time, she did not have ascites, but still continued to have hepatosplenomegaly.
So we've got this child whose ascites has disappeared on its own. We've not treated the child. She's been lost to follow-up. And when she's come back, she still has an elevated liver enzymes 3 months later. What would we like to do now? If it was a Y by now, it should have flared up. We should have had something coming up.
Of course, I would still go for a CT, and if required liver biopsy, I think the gastro would be able to tell us better about this. And plus, look for other viral markers.
So we have an entity called HIV-associated liver disease, okay? But in that also it's primarily a biliary pathology. So you would get elevation of the alkaline phosphatase and GGT in these patients with elevated bilirubin. So otherwise HIV itself, without any other coexisting thing, can also cause liver disease. But there the features are different, and there you would have features of, liver impairment, you would have portal hypertension and other things. So it's really odd. I mean, why? What could be the other possible reason? But what happens to the albumin now? What has
Albumin
happened
still
to it?
normal. Still normal.
And the alkaline phosphatase
It's
is
still
also still normal. And the enzymes are just slightly elevated. That could just be a variation, you've tested it 2 times. So it's basically static only, really.
I mean, if with this kind of an elevated enzymes in a non-HIV child, we would have worked up for a lot of other things like Wilson's or autoimmune.
Absolutely. So I think you cannot ignore these enzymes.
Did the
So-
at any point of time was GGT done? What was the biliary tract?
We've not
like?
done GGTP in this child.
Yeah, biliary tract, because sometimes some opportunistic infections. Like
No, with an
cryptosporidium.
alkaline phosphatase being normal, the GGTP was not a must.
Alkaline phosphatase may be normal in a malnourished child who is zinc deficient. So better marker would be a GGT in that scenario to look at the biliary tract. Ultrasound for a biliary tract, because rarely cryptosporidium can also cause, opportunistic infections can cause sclerosing cholangitis. So did the child have pruritus in the next 3 months?
This child had no clay stools, no pruritus, no jaundice, no chronic diarrhea, nothing suggestive of it.
So you should look for all causes of chronic hepatitis. So you would do tests for Wilson's, you would do tests for autoimmune, you would do tests for...
Yeah, so basically, even
and
if the child,
very important, like Dr. Yacha said, I think I still want to do a good imaging, a good ultrasound and Doppler to see whether this is really a chronic liver disease and chronic hepatitis.
Okay. Okay. From the point of view of a non-HIV, we said we'll rule out autoimmune, Wilson's, those kind of conditions, chronic liver diseases. But in an HIV scenario, any particular, anything else that we should keep in mind?
Okay, so broadly, the causes of hepatitis in HIV-infected children can be divided into infections, into malignancies, and drugs. So now drugs is out because drugs, can cause, especially if the patient has been on ART, so that is not a phenomenon. But a patient who's on ART, you would obviously think of drugs as a cause of hepatitis. In terms of malignancies, I'm just taking the uncommon ones first. There are mainly 2. The one which lymphoma sometimes can involve, and you can have liver involvement and all that, but there you would definitely, if you do a scan, you would see some nodes and other features, etc. Sometimes Kaposi's can also involve, but that is also rare. But yeah, these are the 2 malignancies which we would keep in mind. And as far as infections are concerned, viral infections, bacterial, parasitic, and fungal. So viral, we've already talked about Hep B, Hep C, CMV, and EBV. And there are some viruses like adeno and HSV which can cause fulminant liver failure in these patients. In parasitic, somebody mentioned Cryptosporidium, Microsporidia, as well as you can have PCP, producing liver disease. And in fungal, you can have Candida, and you can have histoplasma as the 2 pathogens. And finally, as bacteria, MAC and TB. So this is the entire list of all things which can involve the liver.
Yeah, that's from an OI point of view.
Yes.
But if we talk about HIV itself causing the hepatitis, how would it be causing it?
It basically mainly affects the biliary tract actually. So it produces there, and the features of HIV associated liver diseases mainly, they have jaundice, they have hepatomegaly, they have pain, and they have marked elevation of bilirubin, SAP, and GGT.
There have been reports of mitochondrial depletion in HIV-infected patients. So fatty liver, mitochondrial disorders could also be one of the features. So non-alcoholic steatohepatitis has also been reported in HIV-infected children.
Yeah, NASH is again is not an unusual thing, and they would present with hepatomegaly. But then I would like to see the lactates in those patients.
Yeah. Now there's one question from the audience. This is from Pratik Parikh from Sion Hospital. He says if the CD4 is low and hepatitis B and HCV are negative, HCV ELISA are negative, should we go for an HCV RNA in this child?
So let's say even if this patient is Hep C positive, I don't think Hep C is the cause of all this. So
Hep
I
C
would, at this
usually in
stage,
children at
I
this stage,
wouldn't be doing
it wouldn't be
HCV RNA.
causing much of a problem at this stage.
And that recommendation for doing HCV RNA is, if the count is less than 100, they don't mark a serologic response and you would do a ELISA.
Okay, let's go.
RNA.
So as we all saw, the causes of hepatitis in HIV-infected children would be hepatitis C, hepatitis B, NASH, drug-induced, and autoimmune hepatitis. So what are the workup? We did ANA, anti-LKM antibody, anti-smooth muscle antibody, which was non-reactive, a 24 hours urine copper, which was normal, ophthal examination was normal, a serum alpha-1 antitrypsin was normal, EBV VC IgM was negative, and TOS titers showed CMV IgG positive. The mother did not allow us for liver biopsy, and since we were having limited resources, no further workup was done. On her subsequent follow-up, her liver functions were still deranged. Her SGOT was 170, SGPT was 219. 5 months later, her CD4 dropped to 63.
So if the mother doesn't allow, can we ask the father?
Others died. We'll have to go to heaven to get the permission. How would the liver biopsy help us in this situation?
A lot of things. So one is definitely it will give you a clue on what is the causing. You may be able to actually. So I want to know the pattern of the injury. So remember that we have moved away from doing liver biopsies for staging the disease. We are now doing liver biopsy mainly to find the etiology. That's the only. So here you have no clue at all in this patient what we are dealing with. So liver biopsy is a must.
What would we look for on the biopsy?
So you may still have seronegative autoimmune hepatitis. You may be having subclinical bile duct injury, which you'll be picking up on this. You may get opportunistic infection. You may get granulomatous hepatitis, which may be picked up. Remember that we all talk of serum alkaline phosphatase and gamma GT as a marker for infiltrative liver disease. Remember that they have only sensitivity of 85%. That means in 15% of the patients, you'll be missing out on granulomatous liver disease because of a normal. So despite cholestasis, you may have normal alkaline phosphatase and GGT in 15% of the patients. So I would want to do a liver biopsy for
You know, I would
Ajay,
actually
like
take a pragmatic view here. I think we've done a lot of investigations. We have not found any OI. We've not found anything. And this patient's CD4 count has dropped. I would at this point definitely consider starting ART in this patient.
Okay.
Because, now, I mean, we've done enough and we might actually, I don't know whether this patient was put on cotrimoxazole prophylaxis after the...
This child was started on
cotrimoxazole. So it could just be, we've done everything and now if we don't do something, there will be an OI which will come up, which has not come up till now.
Okay.
Another illness, is a cryptococcus. I mean, I was just thinking about it. Sometimes you can have disseminated.
Now this child has been going on for 5 months.
Yeah, so it cannot be that. But I'm just saying, I forgot to mention that as a cause of liver function abnormalities in a patient who's sick and who has low CD4 counts or serum cryptococcal antigen, but not in this patient. But at this point in time, we could think about other investigations, but I would want to start ART.
Suppose if we could do a liver biopsy, would you ask for an electron microscopy or only a light microscopy?
No, I think light microscopy is good enough. I know you are hinting at mitochondrial changes and to look at the mitochondrial changes. I think a good light microscopy will pick up the mega mitochondria and the major changes. So if it is there, then I think electron microscopy is justified. Otherwise, not routinely.
I think Dr. Ira, again, I know this patient is not affording, but he has undergone a lot of investigations. Again, I say I would definitely do a better imaging for this patient. We have not found a OI. We are just banged upon on one ultrasound report which is done in the beginning. We have done so many other tests, but at least I think
But
if not...
from an OI point of view, if the child was asymptomatic for 5 months, that OI should have flared up by now.
What is happening to the weight of the patient? Is he losing weight or, what is
No, the
happening
weight is
clinically?
still static. The child has not lost weight.
Okay, but even, if this patient would come to me, I would do a CT, beg from somebody, do a CT free, and then if everything is okay, I would put on ART.
Okay. So what ART combination would you like to give in this child?
I mean, in this patient, we would want to give she's 10 years old and the weight. So I would prefer an NNRTI-based combination, and I would use 2 drugs like zidovudine with lamivudine along with efavirenz as the first choice in this patient.
Yeah,
Because
so we don't want to use nevirapine in these patients with a CD4 less than 250. So we want to use probably 2 NRTI and 1 NNRTI, of which efavirenz is the choice. Correct.
So we started her on zidovudine, lamivudine and efavirenz. Gradually her liver enzymes normalized. She had a weight gain of 2 kg in 3 months and her repeat CD4 count showed an elevation to 130. So we are seeing at presentation her SGOT is 171 and SGPT is 195. After almost 1 year, her SGOT has come back to normal 43 and SGPT has come to 32.
One comment. I know this patient again is not affording, but what your antiretroviral therapy does is it works on the virus. It doesn't work on the CD4 at all. So if at all you want to know whether your patient is in a clinically, virologically, immunologically doing well, what will tell you is the viral load status. We know that we are not done the baseline viral load, but what your drugs do, antiretroviral therapies do is it doesn't work on the CD4 at all. What it works is on the viral load. So you have to demonstrate a negligible or less than depending upon what system you are using. So
Yeah.
that tells you that patient. So 130 CD4 is good. I know his patient is doing clinically well. But what will tell me that a patient is really doing my antiretroviral therapy is working or not would be that the virological status is less than
Yeah.
20 or 40.
The problem is viral load is going to cost us 4,000 rupees. So another marker would be to look at CD4 CD8 ratio. If the CD4 CD8 ratio, because it would be reversed in very severe disease, it starts coming back to normal, back to 1 or 2, you know that the virus is suppressed. So that would be one indirect evidence of looking at viral load without spending a lot of money there. But now we've started ART, the enzymes came back to normal. What were we dealing with? What was the liver disease because of?
So it was probably a subclinical infection which was going on in the liver, which has got controlled because immunology has improved. I think that's my guess at the best.
But here's the point. The response to therapy has taken place. So that means probably it was related to
HIV.
your HIV, most likely. And there might be mild reaction. So it's actually a lesson to be learned. Yes, HIV also can result in elevation of the enzymes, isn't it? Transaminase.
In adults, it's been known that HIV can cause a lot of NASH. And in children, we've not really picked up. I think after so many patients of HIV, this was the first child that we had who had these elevated liver enzymes and we had to work up so extensively. So it's not very common. It's not a very common condition.
So if it was a NASH because of HIV, you would have picked it up on ultrasound.
Yes, we
the
should
ultrasound
have
would not
picked
have
it
been would not have been normal. So I don't think we should be calling this
Yeah.
NASH.
No, this
if
is
you
HIV
believe the ultrasound report, you cannot now disregard the ultrasound
we
report.
are labeling this child as HIV-associated hepatitis. Currently, we
That you can say, but NASH you can't say.
Yes.
I don't think you can
unless
label
have
him
a biopsy
anything.
features.
absolutely,
They are not
absolutely.
there.
I don't think we can really label him anything, to be honest.
It's just because we've had a response to
But
therapy.
the good thing is that patient is
Yes.
managed well and his hepatitis has disappeared, whatever the cause.
No, I have a question to the.
Is that the LFTs were not fitting in with an HIV-induced hepatitis because the pattern usually is elevation of the bilirubin with SAP and GGT. That is pattern, so that was not there. But otherwise, yeah, it was probably. I don't know how to explain that.
So, HIV-associated cholangiopathy, if you want to talk, it will not improve with ART alone.
Yeah.
Two comments. One is, I think somebody raised up the possibility of autoimmune hepatitis. How common does autoimmune hepatitis occur in congenital or acquired immunodeficiency? Is it common, or I was actually reviewing a case report for a journal. Somebody has sent it up and I really found very little evidence in literature to say this.
I agree with you because even connective tissue disorders are much low on the cards in patients who have seropositive.
I agree in acquired immunodeficiency, autoimmune disorders are not very common. But in congenital immunodeficiencies, in fact, they are one of the most
In your
important
CVIDs,
things.
the common variable
CVIDs, chronic variable
immunodeficiencies.
immunodeficiency and all that.
Only the B cell, not the pure B cell.
In hypogammaglobulinemias, it's not been reported. But if you have B cell with a common variable, yes, it's
Yes.
been reported.
Because actually these
And
patients...
autoimmune disorders are common in HIV, not autoimmune hepatitis, but you do get APLA common in HIV infected patients. So you will see a lot of APLA positive in them. So they do have hypergammaglobulinemia. So because of polyclonal B cell activation, you do get a lot of antibodies in their body. Whether it's going to cause systemic or autoimmune disorder, we don't know, but APLA has been reported with HIV. Right. Okay.
There are individual case reports, but most of them when you read through...
Yeah, I think we'll
very
go
nice.
further because we are running short of time. Let's go further on the slide. I think we've already discussed on how HIV can cause hepatitis, and one was mitochondrial, the other was CXCR4 activation. and basically the HIV replication in the liver tissue itself. Okay, thank you very much to the panelists and the audience for a very interactive session.